Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me, and welcome to Webzurich, our May edition. My name is Olga. It's the first time I'm hosting this event, so I got the honor. And we'll be starting in a few minutes with our three amazing speakers. We have 3 talks for today. And before we do that, let's explore the YouTube area, because somewhere to the left or right from you is the comments area, where you could post anything at any time and have a chat, ask something, exchange your impressions of the talks, and just have a little bit of fun. Right. So before we start, I'm gonna, for people who are joining today for the first time, I'm gonna introduce Webzurich a little bit. Today is the May edition. We try to do this every month, trying to do our best with the with the pandemic situation. What is Webzurich? Webzurich is the community which offers, makes a monthly meetup for everybody who is working on web. And by that, we don't mean just developers, we mean everybody, literally everybody. Designers, accessibility professionals, marketing, SEO, content strategists, people who work with AR, VR, no matter what side of web are you coming from, you're very, very welcome in this community. We also do not discriminate people by their level of experience. So we welcome literally everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned professional or if you're just making your first steps. Come, join, meet some people, have fun, learn, and exchange. As a community, we have a few principles. So since everybody is welcome, we would like to make everybody feel safe and secure. That's why we have a code of conduct. So if you are joining Webzurich just now, or if you have been part of it for a while but haven't read the code of conduct, I encourage you to go on our website, webzurich.ch, and take a look at the code. But all in all, we're here to get together, to collaborate, to have fun, to find friends, to learn. And because our community is very diverse, we mostly speak English. And of course, this entire setup would not be possible if there would be no participants. So we encourage everybody to participate, for example, by giving a talk like we will have today. And from an experience, I can say that giving a talk at Webzurich is very, very easy, even for those who have certain stage fright or have never done this before. We're actually having really short talks, about 15 minutes. We do not do any official person-to-person Q&A. And to submit a talk, it's super easy. You just have to go to our website, find this purple button, click it, fill out the form to give us some information about your topic, about yourself, so that we can present you on the website. And actually, we're here, the organization team and the entire community, we're here to help you out. So if you would like to try this public speaking for the first time, we would be happy to help with anything. And I mean literally anything. We'll help you prepare your slides. We'll help you tailor your content. We will, do dry runs with you. So please don't be shy. Please submit your talk. You will be surprised how many amazing talks we have had from people who have just done their first project or just made their first steps in web development or design or content. All right, so apart from monthly meetups, we also have a place to hang out outside of meetups. It's our Slack community. You can join it by finding a link to the Slack again on our website, webzurich.ch. And yeah, feel free to join different channels, meet some people. You could discuss some different technologies in there. You could even find a job or a new project. This is the team that brings Webzurich to you. We're trying to do that on a monthly basis. So if you'd like to reach out to any of us, we're all present. Some of us are going to be in YouTube comments today. Some are going to be we're always present in Slack. So reach out if you have any questions, ideas. We're there for you. So Webzurich has always been a neutral place. We are not biased towards any company, and would like to stay like this. That's why we're always looking for sponsors. And today our sponsors, our recurring sponsors to whom we would like to send some thanks, are Rockstar Recruiting and Graph CMS, which help us to make the streaming possible, help us to make the meetups in person whenever they are going to happen again possible. So thanks a lot to our sponsors. Now, actually, there is a message from Rockstar Recruiting that that we would like to play to everybody. Let me just try and put it on. I hope we can all see and hear this video. All right.
Hello to everyone at Webzurich, here from Rockstar again, and it's a pleasure to see you all. So, coming to you tonight with 2 new positions. So I'll jump right in and tell you a bit more. And the first one is actually a front-end engineering position with a small company based here in central Zurich. They are an ETH spin-off and they focus on educational software. It's essentially trying to empower younger people to, one, collaboratively work with technology, but 2, bridge the gap between fun and learning, so to speak. Now, they're looking for an Angular developer, Angular and TypeScript in conjunction. This can be, I would say, anywhere from junior to mid-level of experience. It's a small team, so you're going to come in and you're going to have to understand what's existing already, but hopefully have an impact from day one. The salary range for this position is from, I would say, 90 to 100,000. And yeah, I would say quite an international team, English speaking, and generally speaking, a nice front-end position for you to take a look at. Secondly, we have a more, I would say, full-stack focused position in digital. This is for a technical lead. So our client focus on digitalization for SMEs in Switzerland, essentially. And this position requires one, I would say, senior full-stack engineering skills, but also someone who would like to take technical lead on projects. Therefore, you'd be responsible for defining the, I would say, technical roadmaps, the tech stack, how to implement features, and also collaborating with, of course, customers and designers and products people, etc. So wearer of many hats, but ultimately a position that one allows you to define the technical stack. So it'd be like Node.js or Golang on the back end, for example, or you can choose to use React, Angular, or Vue, your library or framework of choice. And yeah, really quite an interesting position. This does require, I would say, a minimum of C1 German, or ideally of a native level. On site in Winster is required 3 days a week with 2 days a week home office. So if you are in Zurich, it's a short commute. But yeah, I mean, these positions are very much live, coming exclusive to us, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from anyone that you might be interested, or from, of course, yourself. Other than that, again, great to be here. Wishing everyone at Webzurich well, and very much looking forward to the talks tonight. Once again, cheers. Bye-bye.
So that was a message from Rockstar Recruitment from Kiran. I'm gonna go on with the presentation, and actually, I think it's the time to invite our first speaker today, Hussam. You're live. We can hear and see you. How are you doing? I think you're muted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hi, Olga.
Hi, how are you doing?
All good. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here again.
Fantastic. Hussam, so you're going to be talking today about Powercoders and teaching people how to code. I heard that you are actually originally from Damascus and that your story of getting to Switzerland and becoming the part of Powercoders is incredibly inspiring and emotional. Would you be sharing that today?
Exactly.
All right. Fantastic. So are you ready? Should I hand over everything to you?
Yes, thank you so much. Allow
All
me
right.
first to share my presentation. Yes. Do you see my presentation? Ah, perfect. Yes, all good.
All right. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Olga, for the intro. And also thank you so much for Webzurich for this opportunity. I think some of you already have seen me last year or the last 2 years. And this is my third time, but every time actually Powercoders comes with a new update and new improvement. So yes, my name is Hussam Allaham. I'm a Syrian refugee and came to Switzerland 5 years ago. And actually, I want to present to you Powercoders. But before I present Powercoders, I want also to make it like a journey for everyone, because I think it's easier that you connect with someone that you feel or you really have the right feelings about the topic we are talking about, because this is something about be very human, give opportunities, support someone, and this is actually my story, which is not only my story but the story of millions of other refugees. So I chose to start with my personal story. So I actually also the personal story of the life story of the founder of Powercoders, who is a Swiss person, and in 2010, I was still in Syria. I was a fresh graduate from university. I had like all the future in front of me as a young person in Syria. Still, I was not yet a refugee. So I had lots of dreams. I had married the woman I loved. She was my colleague at university. And in 2011, the crisis has started in Syria. Until that moment, I was still like in Syria, struggling to stay there. I never wanted to leave my country. And I had my first daughter, as you see in the picture. She was still 2 months old. And I was like very successful in my country, in my city, very famous for being a successful teacher, and was quite a busy person with lots of dreams and ideas for the future. At that time, Christian was had his own IT company, Atitso, which and this in this photo he is presenting it in the Silicon Valley, and also he's an entrepreneur and was doing quite a very successful job. That's I think you can connect to him better than connecting to me, because the next page you will see like everything I mentioned a moment before is gone. So my community, my city, my work, my place where I grew up, I forcibly was displaced from my country. In 2013, 2014, I had to escape, to flee with my wife and daughter to seek a safe place to stay. And as I said before, I tried to stay in Syria and it was pretty difficult. Things became very dangerous, and even like I survived many situations, hardly survived these situations. So I went to Lebanon in 2013. I stayed in Lebanon for 3 years, and it was still a shock for me that I am out of my country. What's happening? I always thought that next week I will be back to my city, be back to my friends, to my community, to my family, to the friends, but that has never come until now. At the same time, Chris has sold his company, Atitso, and had time to spend with his family. He had his first child also at that time, 2014, and was planning to start something new. And at the same time, he was like, he accidentally met some people, some refugees, when he was moving his apartment. And they were cleaning and moving boxes, and he had a chat with some refugees to find out that they are highly qualified. They speak English fluently. They have diplomas from their country. And he asked them, "Why aren't you doing something else? Why not working in companies, or because you are highly qualified, you have diplomas, etc. And most of the replies he always received that we sent tens, if not hundreds, of applications to companies, and we were always rejected, and nobody wanted to offer us an opportunity. He felt inspired by this, and he wanted to, the idea started to evolve in his mind. In 2016, I was very lucky to be accepted in the resettlement program with the UNHCR, and the Swiss embassy picked my profile, also accidentally for me. So I came from Lebanon to Switzerland by plane with my wife and daughter. And in 2016, it was my first year in Switzerland. I tried to learn the language, also to integrate, to understand the country, the culture, because it's a big difference, and we need to, as refugees, we need to adapt. And this is, as you see, starting a life from scratch. So everything I have done in my life, now I'm starting from scratch. I need to learn the language, adapt myself, integrate in this new country. At the same time, Chris had a trip to the US when he met two ladies. One of them is working with refugees in catering, and one with women in coding. So he got inspired by these two ladies, and he decided like to start something for refugees in coding, since he's from the IT industry in his home city, Bern, where he started the pilot. And with a group of locals, he decided to kick off a pilot, which was in 2017 and at the same time, I was one of the participants. I got accepted for Powercoders in the pilot project 4 years ago, and followed the program with Powercoders, and eventually kicked off my career life. At the same time, that was the project that Christian has started, beside to other small projects, and that is the journey when it started. After that, after I've done my internship with an IT company, CubeTech. Powercoders asked me, looking at my background, what I worked also in Lebanon, to join them in the founding team to start or to continue this impactful journey and support. And this I was presenting Powercoders to a group. So quickly jumping into the topic, we are talking about why is Powercoders. As you see, like now there's a huge crisis everywhere with around 80 million refugees worldwide. And these people, a lot of them are not ignorant people, as maybe you hear sometimes from the media, or like when someone labels people and put them in categories. No, a lot of these people, millions of these people, are not ignorant. They are university students who couldn't continue their education and they had to escape before graduation. They are doctors, engineers, teachers who lost everything and they have to start from scratch. And they come to a new country, to a new community. And if we are talking now about Switzerland or other countries, there is a huge demand for IT talents, especially for these IT talents. If they come from a different background, if they have different experiences, they can bring different added values with them. And if they are highly qualified, they can, in a very short time, learn the technologies that are needed. And that's what we have found out and experienced, that these people are very successful after their internships during the last 4 years with Powercoders. And of course, the current crisis has increased the demand for these talented people. So where is Powercoders? Powercoders is in Switzerland, and also we have started recently with the support of the Swiss government and international programs. So we are in Switzerland. We have 2 career days in Switzerland, one in May and one in October, where companies can join us, meet our participants who are refugees and migrants, disadvantaged people, smart people we have selected carefully. I will mention quickly afterwards. And also for the international project, we are targeting highly qualified refugees abroad outside of Switzerland with remote internships. So with the international project, we keep these people where they are living with their communities. And if they have fled to Egypt, to Turkey, to Jordan, etc., so we let them stay where they are. We train them on the technologies that are needed, and then we place them remotely with internships in Switzerland or in Europe. I will mention some success stories later, but allow me also to mention what is our solution. It's a 3 months intensive training. It's a coding boot camp where we train them. It's 3 months intensive training, as I said, divided into 2 parts. The first 7 weeks, we train them on the build strong foundations. And then comes the career day. And the last 5 weeks, we teach them what the companies want. And the main goal is job integration. And there are, of course, no obligation for companies after the internship to offer a job, but at least to be open, like if these people reach the goal, if they are doing quite good, we can, or you can as a company consider offering an opportunity. This is, as I mentioned, so we start with the recruitment process. We receive around 200 applications. We filter to get them to 50. And then out of these 50, we invite them for an interview, for IT test, and for a testing phase to end up with 20 people. They go through the training, and then the internship should be 9 to 12 months. It's up to the companies to decide, and then eventually it ends with a solution. As I mentioned, there's no obligation, but just give it a try. Offer someone not only an opportunity, but a life, and get a talent in your team from a different background and different culture. So we are proud of our work. So far, we have over 90% success rate with internship placement, and over 60% of our alumni, they get jobs. And this is ongoing estimation. And it means that every week or every month, I receive some good news. And even yesterday, I heard that UBS will proceed with an internship to turn into a job. So these are news I always hear, and it's not only with big companies, very, very small companies. We have lots of success stories with startups, with mid-sized, big companies, and we have lots of companies as industry partners. This is our dream. We want to support refugees and migrants, disadvantaged people, with building hubs and supporting them where they are. So quickly to share some success story with you that Jamila Amini is from Afghanistan. She has an IT diploma. She was a IT teacher in her country, in Kabul. And for 2 years in Switzerland, she was struggling to get at least an interview with a company, and she couldn't manage. She sent around 100 applications. She was very disappointed, and until when she heard about Powercoders, she applied and she got accepted as a participant. And on the career day, Swisscom was impressed by her potential and her profile and offered her a 6-month internship and signed a contract immediately after the 6 months. So you see, like, she struggled for 2 years. She sent a lot of applications with no hope. And with Powercoders, I will mention, like, it's not Powercoders, it's really the IT companies, but what Powercoders do or does is the trust building between these two communities and the networking. Another story is Gajan Daran, who also has a master's degree in IT from his country. For 3 years, he was struggling to get into IT. He sent lots of applications, and they all were rejected or even ignored. And also very disappointed, he joined Powercoders. On the career day, he met with Migros, and they offered him a 6-month internship eventually and a job after that. So the 2 stories I mentioned at the beginning, there are people with diplomas and experience. But now I will mention 2 stories with people with no IT background, but they are smart people with very fast learning curve and great potential. So Abdul Nawaz Bukti from Pakistan, when he applied to Powercoders, we were impressed by his potential, by his motivation, and that he did some online courses by himself to teach himself. So we offered him an opportunity. And this guy, after the boot camp with Powercoders, he got a 12-month internship with Buller. And only after 12 months internship, he was able to secure a job as a junior front-end developer. And this is for the company was like quite a very fast learning curve that someone needs 2 years or maybe 3 years to reach to this moment. But this guy, he managed to reach to the expected level within 12 months only. So now only after 3 years, he is a solution engineer at Squirrel. And only after 3 years, a solution engineer with no IT background, with no IT experience. So these are the people we are talking about. Another story, which is a very fresh story from our international project for remote internships for highly qualified refugees abroad. Abdul Karim is from Syria, a young guy who had to escape his country, his city, also Damascus. He couldn't continue his education, and the situation in Turkey was very difficult for him. He had to do any kind of job to survive and struggle and support his family. So he worked in a socks factory where he worked around 13 to 14 hours per day for a very low salary, but he needed to do that because he wanted to just do it for a living. But at the same time, he never lost his hope, and he was educating himself after, like, in his free time, even though he doesn't have a free time. And now he is doing an internship remotely with a Swiss company. It's Vitae. It's based in Zug. So also he doesn't have an IT background, but he's a very smart person. He really convinced the company, and he's has already done some online courses and got some diplomas and certificates. So at the end, it's actually, as I said, it's not Powercoders, it's the IT companies, the IT teams, the IT departments in the companies who are passionate about giving an opportunity to someone, offer a new hope, a new life to someone. So what we do at Powercoders is we just bring you as companies, IT teams, IT department, to these people. We put you together, we train them, we prepare them, and we know already there's a gap, and we try to fill this gap with not only with IT skills, but also with the social and business skills. We prepare them to be ready as much as possible, get familiar with the technologies they want, even get some certificates, and at the end, they will be very successful. So let's do it together. If you would like to be part of this impactful journey, just send me an email, and you can find my email on our website. You can just quickly go there, and you can check that there are remote internships, there are internships in Switzerland, and you can join this journey. So thank you so much. I made it quite quick, so I know time is very short, but thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Hussam. That was really, really impressive. And thank you so much for sharing your personal story. Yeah, I'm so touched of hearing of what kind of work Powercoders is doing and how big of an impact does it have on people's life. So quick question from me, what can we do in Webzurich to actually, help Powercoders to keep doing what they're doing?
So that's the question I was waiting for. So the best support we receive is always to have companies who are interested to offer internships. And we also, so we need companies interested to offer internships. I can have a call, I can send these companies who are interested all the details. We also need trainers who are IT developers who can volunteer for a few hours. We also need people with IT or no IT background who can be job coaches and accompany our candidates or our participants during their internship, because this is also a support we provide to the companies and to the participants. Workshops, etc. But as I said, the best support we receive, we need companies who are always interested to offer internships, and there's no obligation for companies. It's just give it a try. If you like, you can receive some CVs, invite them for interviews, and at the end you decide if you proceed, if there is a fit, a match with someone or not, or you say, okay, I am looking to join the next career day, or maybe send me more profiles.
All right. Thank you so much again for coming and sharing this with us. I hope that Webzurich community will help spread the word. And now, without further ado, so thanks and bye, Hussam. I'm going to invite Kathrin, our next speaker, who is going to talk about decoding cloud bills, which is a really cool title. I think that cloud bills that's exactly what people do with them. They have to be decoded. So I'm truly excited for the talk. So Kathrin she describes herself, as I found out, as a free-range site reliability engineer. So I'm curious to hear about that, all about the cloud bill. Hi, Kathrin.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Thanks for the kind introduction, and I'm happy to be here. Oh, and a word about Powercoders. I've actually volunteered as an IT trainer there, and I can absolutely recommend it. It's such a nice group of people, so engaged and interesting, and it's a super good experience, and you should definitely give it a try.
I'm actually considering this, so yeah, lovely that you shared that. Okay, so are you ready for
Yep.
sharing your wisdom on cloud builds and decoding?
Such as it is.
So I'm gonna end your presentation,
Okay.
and the stage is yours.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, today's about, well, my talk is about decoding cloud builds. If you do anything at all on the web these days, you probably have come across running your stuff in the cloud with one of the big cloud providers, and you've probably also run into a bill or two. I often see this in smaller companies where people get quite anxious about the cloud bill. There might be people who keep asking questions about, like, why is this so expensive? Why are we paying so much for this? And so it's kind of useful to have a few pointers for how to deal with the bill. So let's take a look. This is from a Google Cloud project. So I want to make this clear right at the beginning. I don't mean criticism of any of the cloud providers. They're doing it's super useful to be able to rent to rent computing resources in the cloud. And I know that the whole billing system is, of course, a super difficult topic, right? I'm not trying to criticize them for making it complicated. So this is a bill, an itemized bill for a toy project that I run in Google Cloud. This project has like 2 VMs and 1 or 2 disks. And the fully itemized bill comes to about 61 rows, most of which are a very small cost. So you can imagine that if you have a proper cloud project with like a couple hundred VMs, the bill is going to be very large. Usually what you get with a cloud provider, you'll get a monthly bill that is broken down at a very high level. For Google, this would typically be by project. You might be able to break it down by geography. And on Google, you can even break it down further by, like, this is the most detailed breakdown that Google allows by default, which is called a SKU. And I'll get to what a SKU means in a moment. But basically, you get a list of items that basically say, oh, this is some storage capacity. You might have something that says, oh, this is a core, a CPU, this is RAM. You have other entries for networking, for licenses, these kinds of things. Then you have a service that this belongs to. This is sort of the broader category that your cloud provider puts these things into. So for Google, the biggest service is Compute Engine. That's basically all the compute resources. The equivalent for Amazon would be EC2. You have your usage for the month. You see here it says gigabyte. That's just an extra bit of precision, right? It's just gigabytes, but you make it clear that you mean the units go up by a factor of 1024 and not by a factor of 1000, which probably most of the time nobody cares about. But when you're looking at billing, obviously you do care. And then this is sort of the cost at this point, which here is ridiculously low, right? I use a toy project as an example because most of the project of the clients I work with is they don't really want me to publicize their bills. And well, this is also, it's an easy project to look at. Okay, so why is this so hard to look at? You can think of your project as a work of art, right? It's like a Picasso. And if you ask a human to describe a picture like this one, they'll probably say, oh, it's a portrait of a woman. And it's one of those Picasso portraits where you see the face simultaneously from the front and from the side. But maybe if you ask a computer to describe it, you'll get something more like this, where it says, oh, yeah, in terms of the pixel statistics, about 54.72% are sort of gray, which is technically correct, but it's probably not the information that you find most useful at that point in time, because the computer is analyzing the picture in terms of categories that have no meaning to you or that are not interesting to you. And similarly, the cloud bill is organized in terms of categories that make sense to your cloud provider in terms of their billing projects, right? They bill you for things that they think are worth billing for, but it doesn't really relate easily to the things that have meaning for your project. So usually when I try to help someone understand their cloud bill, what I try is to link the things that are on the bill to the things that make sense to their project. So let's begin with looking at in detail at what is in a cloud bill. And the first step is actually seeing what a SKU is. This is the abbreviation that we saw on the first slide, right? The column name. All of the large cloud providers, so Amazon, Azure, and Google, they all use this term. And as far as I can tell, it stands for stock keeping unit. And I think it comes from warehousing. And at some level, it's basically like a billing code. It's something that your cloud provider assigns a price to. And as I said, all of the big cloud providers have these. They all assign these slightly differently. Google, for instance, basically has a SKU for things like, oh, it's a CPU of a certain machine type in a certain region with a certain pricing model. So Google have different types of machines, right? They have the N1 series, they have the E2 series, they have the A2 series. Those have slightly different characteristics. Machines are differently expensive depending on where in the world you rent them. This has something to do with, I guess, how expensive it is for Google to operate their data centers in these regions. There are different pricing tiers. There is on-demand, where you basically just buy the thing, and then if you stop using it, you stop getting billed for it. You can also buy like 1 or 3 year contracts. That usually saves you money. And yeah, this is basically what's in a SKU at Google. A SKU at Amazon will be slightly different, but it's sort of the same principle. Smaller cloud providers typically don't have SKUs, use the term SKU, but obviously they also have categories of things that they assign prices to, right? So in Switzerland, you have Swisscom as a cloud provider, and they will bill you based on something called a CU, a compute unit, or a gigabyte of RAM as well. Okay, so let's go back to the bill and focus on one of the entries. So this is storage PD capacity. If you've seen a few of these, you'll know this is a disk. PD stands for persistent disk. Yeah, it says 51.24 gigabyte month, which is a bit weird, I guess. Okay, but so when I see this kind of item on a bill and somebody asks me, what is this for? The first thing I do is I look for the disks that are in their project, and I try to correlate those disks with what I see on the bill. So in this case, because it's a very small project, I only have 2 disks. I know one of them is a standard persistent disk, which is a hard drive, a magnetic disk, and the other one is called balanced, which is Google for it's a cheap SSD. And they're both in the same region, so that doesn't help me. But I see one of them has 100 gigabytes size, and the other one has a 10 gigabyte size. And the other thing I know is I took this snapshot on the 16th of March, so in the middle of the month. I get billed by calendar month. 16th of the month, yeah, it's probably 100 gigabyte disk sometime in the middle of the month, right? So it's 51.24 gigabyte. And if you do the math, sort of translate about 50 gigabytes into gigabytes, it's roughly okay. It's sort of okay. So this is how I would link this up. And then the other thing you can do is you can look up the SKU. Google have something called the SKUs Explorer. It's really well hidden, which gives you a little more information about what the SKU refers to. You can also request the SKUs via an API. All of the big cloud providers let you do that. And that, again, gives you some idea, some description of what the SKU stands for and how it gets billed. You can also sort of correlate the entries on your bill with the timeline, like when you add all of this, like when did you add a disk, and then you can see like the price, the cost jumps at that point. So you can sort of work things out a bit. But yeah, I see somebody made a comment, and I'm gonna come to this in a second. So this is sort of the basics, right? This is something where you can get started, and it's probably going to be okay. The next thing you can do, which is actually more interesting, is you can label your things or tag your things, right? It's called a label in Google, and it's called a tag in AWS and in Azure, but it's the same idea. You can attach labels to the things that you create, like a VM, a virtual machine, or a disk. You attach a label to them. I think larger projects, they typically tag things by cost center. I usually tag things by purpose because I find that the most useful for me. Like, what am I using this for? And then later I can group by that. You label these things. You can sort of filter by labels on the billing console in Google, but it's really difficult to group by labels like that. So what you can do is you then set up a billing export to BigQuery. In Amazon, there is an equivalent thing where you can tag your resources and then set up a billing report to S3 and from there to Athena. And then you can run queries on that. Google used to have a way, I think, to export this into CSV, but it's deprecated. Amazon, I think you can still get CSV. I'm not sure, but anyway, there's sort of, you can do this, what they call standard SQL, which is not quite like the SQL that you know from like normal relational databases because it has a few things around nested labels. But then you can group your costs in a way that is meaningful to you. So you can basically choose your labels so they reflect categories that have meaning to you. And then you can go, oh, okay. So basically all the things that I've labeled integration test, or all the things that I've labeled this is basically just an experiment. I can see the costs for those and group by them, right? And then you can also see, well, do I have unlabeled resources? Because those might be resources that I've forgotten about, that maybe I've left hanging, that are orphaned. So that's super useful, right? But it's a bit of work to set up, but once you've set it up, it's actually quite nice. So once you've done that, you can take a look at some of the more mysterious entries on the bill. So what I see on my bill is 3 entries for a licensing fee for Ubuntu, which is weird because it's a free operating system. Why would I be paying a license fee for it? Well, the good news is the cost is 0. So we have that going for us. But the other weird thing is it has 2 lines for the CPU cost. And so I took a double take because at first I thought, yeah, maybe they have a GPU cost. I don't know. But the VM I have doesn't have any GPUs. The other weird thing is I only have 1 VM with Ubuntu on it. And I double checked this by labeling it and verifying because the label, it travels on to dependent resources. So if you label your VM, then the licenses that are attached to the VM also get the label, which is super useful, right? But anyway, so I only have this 1 VM, and it only ran for like, about 2.5 hours that month. And I get 3 entries on the bill. Okay. So yeah, a bit of correlation with monitoring, and then working out based on the usage here, reveals that one of these is the running time of the VM, but the VM has 2 cores. So one of these lines is per core, which is this, and one of these lines is per VM, which is the top one. And then the bottom line is for the memory cost. So licenses apparently can also get billed by memory. So this is So this is probably, at this point, it's an academic exercise, right? Because the cost is zero. I just wanted to show that you can dig into the intricacies of your bill by sort of looking at the description, correlating it with your monitoring data. And yeah, licensing costs are super difficult to model. And I suppose that the way this came about is somebody had to model license costs. They thought about the ways that licenses could be attached to resources, and they modeled it this way. But when you look at the licenses that actually cost something, they're all modeled slightly differently from this. So it's also possible that this was something that somebody started and then they didn't continue, and nobody complains because the cost is zero. So it's not really worth fixing. But anyway, so now you've got some basic tools, but obviously you can do a lot more with this. So basically the things you need to do to understand your cloud bill are also things that you can use to predict your cloud bill. Now, all of the large cloud providers have something called a billing calculator, where you can sort of click together a hypothetical setup in a browser, and it'll tell you how much it'll cost, probably. But you have to click a lot. So if you want to do sort of a more scripted version of that, obviously you can do that too, right? You can download billing information, and you can use the publicly available APIs to use it. So the challenge here is connecting the things that you buy, like VMs, disks, RAM, licenses, Google Server functions, Amazon Lambda executions, what have you, to the actual SKUs that you need to build them. And there is no good documentation for this. And I don't think there is a public API that does this. Because, yeah, so mostly what I do is I try to work it out logically, and then I run a few experiments where I, create resources with certain settings, and then I look at the SKUs that come out. But you can do this. So you can get, for your current project, you can get your inventory. This is for Google, this is the Asset API or the Compute API or whichever other service you're buying resources through. Amazon, it's EC2 API, does the same thing. You can also get an estimate of your resources through your own automation. So Terraform, for instance, have a cost estimation plugin that does this. You can look at your usage through the monitoring APIs. You need to figure out which monitoring time series actually correlate best with your actual bill, which is not as easy as maybe it should be, but it's possible. And then you try to correlate that with the prices. So it's doable. There's a super cool project that does a very similar thing, but not for money pricing, but for carbon budgets, where they try to work out how much your resources and the usage that you have translate to in terms of electricity, and what that means by sort of looking at which countries this is being generated in and what energy mix your provider uses in those countries. They try to work out what your carbon budget is, which is, kind of really cool. And all of this you can do with. You don't need the SKUs for this, which is good. Anyway, this is what I have. And if you want to know more, the documentation for these is actually surprisingly good. Apart from the bit where it's difficult to correlate the resources and the SKUs. But they had to leave some challenges for us, I guess. And it's kind of interesting to work out. Anyway, if you have questions, I've put my email address here, but I'll also be available in the chat. So thank you.
Thanks, Kathrin. That was really interesting. Like, I've never seen anyone actually dig that deep into the zero bill entries. I think that's quite insightful because you see a lot of things that you actually do not consider. Okay, so anything we would like to address from the chat?
I think there was one comment about exporting the billing terms into a table, and that's that's a really useful way of going about it if you can figure out a way to export them that way.
All right. I would love to ask, like, what's the biggest bill you've ever gotten from Google, but I'll probably refrain from that.
So I used to work at Google, and I think I have saved some really large number of petabytes in Bigtable at some point. So it was like 5 petabytes or so. It was kind of good.
Mhm.
But I don't think anybody ever computed how much that was in money.
All right. Yeah, I love those stories when like of orphan resources and everything. So thanks a lot, Kathrin. And before we go on with our next speaker, I'd like to remind everyone that we actually have like a little after party, after stream get together. So take a look at the video description below. There's going to be a link to Wonder Me. And join it, not now, but after the stream is over, to hang out with us, to hang out with each other. And it's actually a hilarious setup with like a make-believe bar and a make-believe lounge. So come and check it out. Okay, so now we're going to have Josua. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Josua works at Nothing AG, which is a hilarious title for the company. That's the first time I personally hear about it, but I kind of want to work there as well now. So you're going to talk about accessibility today. Am I right?
Exactly.
I have a question. Like, what was your way? How did you arrive at this particular area of web development and area accessibility, like pun intended?
Well, already 20 years ago, when I started to do my first baby steps in creating websites, back in the times, it was like layout tables and stuff like that. You wouldn't do today anymore. But already back then, I kind of sensed the potential that the internet has to bring humankind closer, to kind of help us reunite as one big family. And in this spirit, I felt like that the more people we can include in this experience, the more human potential we kind of can unfold. So especially people who are restricted in some ways, they are used to think outside the box because they were forced to kind of think and act outside the box. And there's a lot of potential we can unfold there. So like 8 years ago, I started to dig into this accessibility thing. And I guess everybody agrees, especially during this current situation, we all are very much depending on working digital media, and no one must be excluded from this experience, especially not from like any physical disabilities, right?
That is so true. I like how our today's edition is about helping people and all the good stuff that the technology
Definitely.
can actually do. So, okay, let's start your presentation. So,
All right.
I'm going to add your screen and the stage is yours.
Perfect. So, hello everybody, and welcome to my talk about complex and accessible JavaScript widgets with simple HTML. Today it's Wednesday. It's for the Webzurich Meetup, but actually this talk is kind of a short version of a longer workshop that I used to hold, and we will have the next one on 28th of July. So you will see the link later on again if you're interested in what I'm talking about here. And it's not only about accessibility, it kind of transforms into every aspect of creating websites. So yeah, just register to our longer workshop then. So my name is Josua Muheim. I'm a full stack web developer for roughly 15 years now. And I think that technology should always be used to unlock the human potential. And for that, as I said, it's very important to include as many individuals as possible. So in this spirit, I've become an accessibility expert roughly 8 years ago, and I've been working most of the time for the Swiss Foundation Access for All, which some of you may already have heard. They are working in the field for over 20 years now. And I'm also the initiator of the Accessibility Developer Guide, which is a comprehensive resource about all topics accessibility. So it's tangible and technical, but still pretty easy to understand. And there's a lot of code examples which you can play around with. You can copy and paste into your projects. They serve as inspirations. And they are created, the whole guide is created by developers, and it's mainly targeted at developers, but also the designers, content editors, etc. It's open source, and you're very welcome to join our little community who is actively maintaining and enhancing the guide. So, as you heard, for a few months now ago, I started to work for Nothing AG. It's a lively peer-to-peer organized web design agency and venture lab. It's located close to Bern in Switzerland. And our goal is to become the leading accessible first web company in Switzerland. So we say that accessibility is not an option anymore. It's state of the art, and it's an element of high quality web design craftsmanship. So if you're interested in our services, just head over to nothing.ch. And if you are interested in becoming one of those peer-to-peer organized organizations, check out PeerDom, which is our flagship project at the moment. We're happy to help you in your on your path to migrate into a peer-to-peer organization. So I want to start with a basic question of trust. If you're climbing a rock's face, you're heavily depending on your carabiner linking you safely to the rock face, right? So what do you trust more in this situation? Is it a link that's implemented using an anchor tag with an href attribute? Or is it a span with an on-click attribute? So I guess most of you will agree that it's definitely the anchor tag. But why? Let me give you some benefits of using traditional HTML, as I call it. So if you're using traditional HTML like a link, you get a lot of behavior for free because the browser takes care of everything. You can click on the link and the browser will just go to the address specified. You can use your keyboard to focus the element. You can activate it. You get a lot of styles for free. For example, you get the underline and you get additional status like focus, hover, and active states and the respective design for them. You can be sure that such traditional HTML elements are very compatible with old browsers and also with browsers of the future. You don't need any JavaScript for this stuff to work, and as such, everything will degrade gracefully even on older machines. You may say now, well, but we can make this span look and feel like a link, can't we? And for sure, we can apply custom aesthetics using CSS. We can apply custom behavior using JavaScript. We can even make it focusable by keyboard using the tab index attribute. And what few people may know, we can change or add semantics to an element using the role attribute. But how will it perform in real life? Let me give you a short demonstration of a code pen that I created for this presentation. We have three elements here. We have the traditional link. Let's inspect it. Traditional link. We have a span with an on-click attribute, and we have kind of the enhanced span with the tab index, the role link, and some more styles. So I can click on the traditional link and it will take me to the target. And this works for the span too. That's nice. Let's see whether we can use the keyboard. For sure, with the traditional link, we can use the keyboard to focus, but we cannot focus the bare span, we can only focus the enhanced one because it has a tab index attribute now. But if I click the enter button, it does not activate, which is kind of a bummer. There are other things that we can't do using the spans. For example, if I want to drag the link to the bookmark bar, this works perfectly, but I cannot drag the spans in any way. Also, if I right-click on the link, I get a context-specific menu. For example, I can choose Open Link in New Tab. This is not possible for the span versions. So as you can see, the spans still are not links, although we really tried to make them feel and look like links, right? So as we have seen, a lot of features are not available, and possibly there are a lot more things somewhere in the background that we are not even aware of that traditional links are able to do, but a span will never be able to do. So I can say traditional HTML beats quirky custom solutions all the time. Because, as you have seen, you get much functionality for free. They are very robust. They always work. They will ever work. And as such, they are very performant because we don't need any JavaScript, and CSS or some basic styling is available too already. You may say now, but why? Why would anyone try to implement a link using a span attribute? And I know 3 reasons for this. The first one is pure ignorance. And trust me, in my 8 years working as an accessibility expert, I've encountered innumerable times that even seasoned web experts tried to implement some element with just the wrong HTML tags. So some typical bad use cases for our span link situation is a list of search results, which is not implemented as a list of links, but as a list of diffs. Or the navigation menu in a single page application. And I've just been to Apple's product store a few days ago. Oops, that was the wrong key. And as you can see, also they have this problem. While I can click on the whole element, right, this works. When right-clicking on it, it's just an image. If I inspect the element, we see that around the image, and there's just diffs, no single link here. So even the big ones, even the huge companies, the web companies seem to make errors like this. And my advice, or I even beg you, please stop doing this. It's wrong, it's ugly, and it leads to a lot of problems. So just use real links when you're trying to implement the link, or specific on your context, use buttons. The second reason is that HTML sometimes cannot be styled as wished. And especially in earlier days, many HTML elements indeed offered limited CSS stylability. And some, to this day, still can't be styled. For example, a select tag. If you're in the situation that you really need to style a select element, you can implement it using a generic div construction. Like you can use a div and apply role attributes to them. For the div that resembles the select tag, you can apply role equals list box. And for all the divs which resemble options, you can apply role equals option. We will get to that role attribute a little bit later in depth. The third reason is that HTML just lacks some elements. So quite a few well-established usage patterns up to this day do not have an HTML equivalent. For example, a tab list. There is no such thing as a tab list HTML tag. So again, in this situation, you are needed to tinker your own custom solution. For example, you can use an unordered list and apply the role of tab list to it. And for each of the tabs, you simply apply a role equals tab. So we've seen these role attributes quite a few times now. And let me explain where it's coming from. It comes from the ARIA standard, which means the Accessible Rich Internet Applications standard. It was introduced 2014 by the World Wide Web Consortium, and it offers attributes to enrich traditional HTML with semantics. So even in our, no, let me just first say that. That's important. It's only semantics. It's not adding any functionality. So coming back to our diffs with the role of list box and the role of option, even though a screen reader, so the device that a blind person is using to browse the internet, will in fact announce this diff now as a select element, there's no interactivity to it yet. So you cannot select anything, you cannot open or close it. Even with keyboard or mouse, there's no interactivity going on. So you need to add all this interactivity on your own using JavaScript. For example, you need to manage all the visibility and styles of your element. You need to provide keyboard focusability and the general interactivity with the element. So selecting an option, opening, closing it, etc. And what few may be aware, in the background, you also need to update the changes to the semantics. For example, when you select an option, the selected option now needs an area selected true. Oops. An area selected equals true attribute. So there's quite a few things going on in the background, and this quickly becomes complex. And I want to demonstrate this quickly in the official, the official collapsible drop-down list box example from the World Wide Web Consortium. So let me open it in CodePen. So as you see, it resembles quite a standard drop-down element, select list. We can open and close it. We can also use it with the keyboard, select something. This is pretty fine. The HTML is very basic. We have a UL, like an unordered list with role equals list box, and each of the options have a role equals options. So nothing surprising here. We have some CSS here. It's like 150 lines of CSS, and now the JavaScript. So to make this simple element work, which simply tries to resemble a native select tag, we need 900 lines of JavaScript. And this may appear as quite a lot, and in fact, I also feel it's quite a lot. But remember, a native element tag, like the traditional link, there's probably a lot more things going on in the background that we are aware of. So if we try to mimic such an element on our own, then we have to take care of all those edge cases. So I will just close my email client here. So we have to add a lot of functionality which we may not even be aware of at the time being. So, as we've seen, we needed over 1,000 lines of code to implement such a basic element. And the sad thing is that support for such area dropdowns, accessible dropdowns, is still varying among the browsers and screen readers that are used out there. And what you also have to keep in mind, ARIA does not offer a recipe for each and every element or usage pattern that you may want to implement. For example, it indeed offers a list box or tab list, but it does not offer a specification for date picker, for example. So you will quickly reach a point where there is no official recipe, and then you will have to tinker your own solution. And the question now is, how can you do that? there needs to be another way to make accessible, complex, interactive patterns, which do not rely exclusively on area. And one way, pretty good way in my opinion, is using standard HTML elements. And this is a good moment to introduce you to the first rule of ARIA, which is also from the World Wide Web Consortium. It states that if you can use a native HTML element with the semantics and behavior you require, then do so. Do not instead repurpose an element and add an ARIA role, state, or property to make it accessible. Simply spoken, this means if there is a native HTML element that does what you want to do, then use that one. Don't try to create your own one and make it accessible using ARIA. And as you will see in a few moments, there nearly always exists a native element, even when not obvious at first sight. Let's take a closer look at two drop-downs that most people will know, just to get an impression of how do big companies deal with such situations. The first of all is Google's autocomplete. And if we head over to Google, so I was pressing the wrong button. If I head over to Google and enter some term and I inspect the elements, you can see here that again, we have the role equals list box on an unordered list, and each element has a role equals options. So Google seems to care about accessibility. They are using role attributes, but I have to say that screen reader accessibility still is rather mediocre. I'm not going into the details. If you're interested into the details and also want to learn how to use a screen reader and see how a screen reader behaves, then please register to our longer workshop. The second autocomplete is by Amazon, and to make it short, they do not use any ARIA. They just use div and span, and so screen reader accessibility is very bad. So the interim conclusion here is both Amazon and Google, they need a drop-down, and they want to style it in a fancy way. So a select tag is not an option. Google uses ARIA. They seem to care about accessibility. Amazon does not really seem to care about accessibility. Probably they don't want to sell a lot of stuff to blind people. No, just a joke, but yeah. And probably there is lots of things going on in the background using JavaScript to handle all these states and the visual appearance and open and close and selecting stuff. But still, it's mediocre to bad accessibility. And this is kind of a frustrating bottom line. I want to ask the question, couldn't this be done any better? And this is the moment to remind you on the first rule of ARIA use. So is there really no traditional HTML element available which can do what we need? And in fact, there is. They are called radio buttons. Radio buttons are 100% customizable because you can style your label element as wished, and you can visually hide the respective input element. You don't need any JavaScript for them to work. And because they are native, they are 100% accessible because the browser takes care of everything. And this is where I want to show you an example in our accessibility developer guide. So it's a list box of radio buttons. We call it the auto-suggest widget in our accessibility developer guide. And if we open the element, which does not look very fancy, but it's rather to make a point, right? You can always make it look better using CSS. It's exactly this simple little drop-down. You can even filter some element if you enter something, which is pretty cool. Now, if I disable CSS, you can see it's just as I said, a list of radio buttons. So it's really easily implemented. So as you have seen, it's radio buttons, and as such, they offer very good screen reader accessibility. And as I can assure you, it only needs a tiny bit of JavaScript because the browser takes care of everything. So the longer workshop that we will hold on 28th of July, we will go through 4 milestones where we first will create the basic HTML, then add interactivity using JavaScript, then add some very small accessibility optimizations using ARIA, and then we apply the visual styles to make it look as wanted. So the verdict here, the element is very accessible. It only needs like 60 lines of CSS and 200 lines of JavaScript, including the filter functionality, which is much less than the ARIA example from the World Wide Web Consortium. But wait, there is more. More unexpected usages of form controls. So in the Accessibility Developer Guide, you can see how to implement a date picker using radio buttons, a tab list, a carousel, an accordion, and also a hamburger menu toggler using a single checkbox. So if you want to learn something about how to easily implement interactive widgets that are also very accessible, just head over to the Accessibility Developer Guide. So this was quite a lot of information, and let's recap. Form controls are very powerful because they can handle much more than just basic user input. They can handle many simple usage patterns and also complex ones when you combine them. They are simple and compatible, they are robust and performant, and they are innately accessible. And as you have seen, they can be styled as wished if you know how to do it. So let me come back to the initial question. When it comes to a link, which attaches you as a climber to the rock's face, or a link that lets you interact with a website on the internet, what do you trust more? The link that it's implemented using the anchor tag or using the span tag? So please remember next time, when you're tempted to glue together some random div and span elements with some JavaScript handlers. And that's all. Thank you. If you want to reach out, please contact Josua at nothing.ch. We can have a virtual coffee break, or go to our services page and see our accessibility offerings. And as I have said, there's the 4-hour workshop. Just head over to tiny.cc/GAAD21-workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josua. That was amazing. I actually love seeing the accessible components being styled in these tiny examples because, yeah, I think I did my fair share of search result items spans, guilty as charged.
Okay, that's all right.
Great.
We're here to learn, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's it, everybody. I'm gonna show one last thing that I have to communicate before we end the stream. So thanks a lot, Josua. And actually, we're having takes a while to share for me. We're actually having a thing. I'm not even sure how to call it. So it's kind of a chat room where you could all join and mingle and find people that has a make-believe bar and lounge, which is really funny. So I encourage everybody to join. You don't have to type in this link, which has like this huge ID. It's down there in the video details. So I hope some of our speakers join as well, and we all can have a little Q&A session. And yeah, with that being said, I'd love to wrap up the May edition of Webzurich. Thank you to all the speakers, to all who watched us, and hope to see you next month.
Sure, just head over to WonderMe and talk to me if you're interested in anything.
Yes, talk to Josua.
Accessibility. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up the broadcast. Bye, everybody.